I stood alone at my wife's funeral. Empty pews, silent chapel. Our 3 children nowhere to be found. I thought they'd abandoned her, abandoned us. Then I found the letter under my windshield, Margaret's handwriting, and everything I believed about that day, about our family, shattered. What she wrote made my blood run cold. Because the truth wasn't that they didn't care. It was so much worse than that. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments section where you're watching from, so I'll know how far my story has gone. The rain didn't stop all morning. I watched it streak down the chapel windows, distorting the stained glass into bleeding colors, reds and blues that looked like bruises. Margaret would have loved this place. Gothic arches, oak pews polished to a shine, white roses everywhere. I'd picked everything she'd mentioned once, years ago, in passing. She never thought I was listening. But I was. I always was. The priest cleared his throat for the 3rd time, glancing toward the entrance, waiting. I knew what he was thinking. Surely someone else is coming. Surely a woman who spent 43 years on this earth had more than one person who cared enough to show up. But the doors stayed closed. I sat alone in the front row, my suit still damp from the parking lot, staring at her casket. They'd done her makeup too heavy. Margaret never wore that much blush. She was beautiful without trying. Soft brown hair always in a messy bun, laugh lines around her eyes from smiling at terrible dad jokes I'd tell just to hear that sound. Now she was silent. And so was everyone else. The priest began. His voice bounced off empty pews, each word an echo that made the absence louder. I checked my phone again, hands shaking. The group text still sat there, mocking me with 3 blue check marks. Wilbert, Mom's service is at 2 p.m. Please. Red. Devin was in Austin, probably still drunk from his fraternity's homecoming rager. I'd seen his Instagram story at noon. Him in burnt orange, solo cup raised, brothers screaming behind him. 22 years old, and he couldn't miss one game day? Not even for her? Ashley was somewhere in Miami with her bridesmaids, celebrating a wedding that wasn't even hers. I imagined her on a yacht, champagne in hand, sun-kissed and laughing, while her mother lay cold in a Wisconsin chapel. And Jordan. God, Jordan. My baby girl had a concert tonight, some indie band I'd never heard of at The Rave in Milwaukee, 40 minutes away. I already bought the tickets, Dad, she said, voice flat as sheet metal. Mom would understand. But would she? I remembered Thanksgiving 6 years ago, the last one we were all together. Margaret had made her famous pecan pie, the one the kids used to fight over. Devin brought his girlfriend. Ashley was still in high school, texting under the table. Jordan wore headphones through dinner. Margaret just smiled, pretended not to notice. When did we stop being a family? When did love become obligation, then inconvenience, then nothing? The priest finished. The silence roared. I stood, legs numb, and walked to the casket. My hand touched the polished wood, still warm under the lights. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it sooner. Outside, the rain had softened to mist. I walked to my truck, shoes squelching through puddles, And that's when I saw it. A manila envelope tucked under the windshield wiper, sealed tight. Margaret's handwriting on the front. For Wilbert, open after. My heart stopped. My hands shook as I tore it open, rain soaking the paper. Inside was a photograph. Our family, years ago. Everyone smiling. And a letter. The first line made my stomach drop. If you're reading this alone, then you know the truth now. But there's something worse you need to understand about why they really stayed away. I thought the funeral was the worst part. Until I read her letter. What I saw next made my blood run cold.
I didn't go home right away. I sat in the chapel parking lot for an hour, engine running, heat blasting, staring at that envelope like it might explode. Rain drummed on the roof. The wipers squeaked back and forth, hypnotic and horrible. Margaret's handwriting stared back at me. Neat, deliberate, the way she used to write grocery lists and birthday cards and notes in my lunchbox when we were young and stupid in love. For Wilbert, open after. After what? After I buried her alone? After I realized our children didn't care enough to say goodbye? My hands wouldn't stop shaking. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my driveway now, I guess, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark, cold. I flipped on the kitchen light and the bulb flickered twice before holding. Everything looked the same. Margaret's coffee mug still sat by the sink, her reading glasses on the counter. The calendar on the fridge still had her handwriting marking doctor's appointments she'd never make. I sat at the table and opened the envelope. The photograph slipped out first, face down on the oak wood. I didn't want to look at it yet. Instead, I unfolded the letter. 3 pages, front and back, written in blue ink. Her hand must have been shaking too, because some words were smudged. It started simply. My dearest Wilbert, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading this alone, then I was right. My throat tightened. I need you to know that I love you. I always have. You were the best part of my life even when I wasn't sure I deserved you. But there are things I never told you. Things I kept hidden because I thought I was protecting you. Protecting us. I read faster, pulse hammering. The children's absence today isn't just neglect, Wilbert. It's consequence. They didn't come because they know. They've known for years what I did, and they've been carrying it like poison. I tried to fix it. God, I tried. But some mistakes don't wash away, no matter how much you scrub. What did she do? My mind raced through possibilities. Affairs? Lies? Money? Nothing made sense. Margaret was the glue. She was the one who held us together when I worked double shifts at the plant. She was the one who drove carpool and made Halloween costumes and sat through every single school concert, even Jordan's awful middle school recorder recital. What could she have possibly done to make our children hate her this much? I flipped the page, desperate. I know you're confused. I know you're angry. But before you confront them, you need to understand the full picture. The reason they stayed away isn't just about me, Wilbert. It's about you, too. It's about what I kept from you to protect the family I thought we were. My chest felt tight. The kitchen walls seemed closer. Look at the photograph, Wilbert. Really look at it. That was taken the summer before everything fell apart. You remember that trip to Lake Geneva, don't you? You thought we were happy. I picked up the photo with trembling fingers. It showed all 5 of us at the lake house. 7 years ago, maybe 8. Devin was 15, gangly and awkward, Ashley was 13, braces glinting. Jordan was barely 10, missing her front tooth. But nobody was smiling. We stood in a line like strangers at a bus stop, stiff, separate, eyes looking everywhere except at each other. How had I not seen it then? I turned back to the letter. The final paragraph made my stomach drop. If you're reading this alone, you know the truth now. But there's something worse about why they really stayed away. It wasn't just about punishing me, Wilbert. It was about punishing you. The letter ended there. No explanation, no closure, just that one sentence hanging in the air like smoke. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Devin. Devin, we need to talk. All of us. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Don't bring the letter. How did he know about the letter?
I didn't sleep. By 5 a.m, I was already dressed, coffee burning a hole in my stomach, staring at Devin's text, "Don't bring the letter." How did he know? Had Margaret told them she was writing it? Had they watched her plan her own funeral and her own abandonment? I couldn't wait until 10. I had to know now. The drive to Austin took 6 hours. I left Green Bay before sunrise, watched Wisconsin blur into Illinois, then Iowa, the fog so thick I could barely see the road. The radio crackled between stations, country, static, gospel, static, like even the airwaves didn't know what to say. I kept replaying Margaret's words. It was about punishing you. What did I do? I was a good husband, wasn't I? I worked 60-hour weeks at the paper mill so she could stay home with the kids. I never cheated, never hit, never screamed. I showed up, I stayed. Isn't that what fathers are supposed to do? By the time I pulled up to Devin's apartment complex near the University of Texas campus, my hands ached from gripping the wheel. The building was one of those modern, stacked box places, concrete and glass, packed with hungover college kids. Beer cans littered the sidewalk. Someone had spray-painted "Hook 'em" on the dumpster. I texted him. I'm outside. He came down 10 minutes later, barefoot, wearing gym shorts and a wrinkled Longhorns t-shirt. His eyes were red-shot, hair a mess. He looked like I felt. You weren't supposed to come yet, he muttered, sliding into the passenger seat. He smelled like stale alcohol and regret. Yeah, well, I couldn't wait. My voice came out sharper than I intended. You want to tell me why you skipped your mother's funeral to shotgun beers with your frat brothers? Devin flinched. Good. You don't get it, Dad. Then make me get it. He stared out the window, jaw tight. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, Mom told us not to come. The words hit like a fist. What? She made us promise. Devin's voice cracked. A month before she died, she sat us all down. Me, Ashley, Jordan, and she said the funeral was for you alone. She said we weren't allowed to be there. I couldn't breathe. That's insane. Why would she? Because she didn't want us to see you like that. Devin turned to face me, eyes wet. She said you'd be devastated, and if we showed up, you'd spend the whole time trying to hold it together for us. She wanted you to grieve, really grieve, without us watching. My chest tightened. That sounded like Margaret, always thinking of everyone else even in death. But something didn't add up. So you all just agreed? You didn't think to tell me? You let me sit there alone thinking you didn't care? We thought you'd understand when you read the letter. Devin's voice dropped. She said she'd explain everything. She didn't explain anything. I slammed my hand on the dashboard. She just left more questions. Devin went silent. The fog outside pressed against the windshield like something alive. "There's more, isn't there, Devin?" He nodded, eyes on his lap. "What did she tell you, Devin?" He swallowed hard. His next words came out barely above a whisper. "She told us to stay away because of what you did, Dad." The world tilted. "What I did? What the hell does that mean?" Devin looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my son's eyes. Fear. "You really don't remember, do you?" My blood ran cold. Remember what? Devin reached for the door handle, hand shaking. "I can't do this alone. Ashley and Jordan need to be here. We all agreed we tell you together or not at all." He stepped out of the truck and leaned back through the window. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Mom's house. All of us. Then he was gone, swallowed by fog and unanswered questions. And I sat there, alone again, wondering what kind of man I really was. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcast, just the hum of tires on wet pavement and my own thoughts screaming at me. "You really don't remember, do you?" Devin's words looped in my head like a broken record. Remember what? What night? What did I do that was so terrible my own wife made our children stay away from her funeral? By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was almost dark. The house felt different now, colder, like it was hiding something. I went straight to the basement. Margaret kept everything down there. Boxes of old photos, Christmas decorations, the kids' school projects she couldn't bring herself to throw away. I'd always teased her for being a hoarder. Now, I was grateful. I yanked the string on the overhead bulb. Yellow light spilled across concrete floors and metal shelves packed with labeled boxes. Holiday decor, tax records, Devin's baseball, Margaret's neat handwriting on every single one. Then I saw it, shoved in the back corner behind a broken lawnmower. A cardboard box labeled 1998 to 2004. Our hardest years. I pulled it down, dust exploding into the air. My hands shook as I peeled back the tape. Inside, layers of memory I'd tried to forget. Construction paper drawings in crayon, stick figures with "I love you, Mommy" scrawled across the top. Mother's Day cards with glitter, long since fallen off. Report cards, birthday party invitations. And beneath it all, a sealed manila envelope. 2 words written across the front in Margaret's handwriting. Not yet. My throat went dry. I sat on the cold basement floor, back against the cinder block wall, and stared at that envelope. Part of me didn't want to open it. Part of me knew that once I did, there'd be no going back. But I'd come too far. I tore it open. Inside, a receipt from Lakeshore Family Therapy, dated July 2003. Margaret's name at the top, 12 sessions, all paid in cash. I never knew she went to therapy. Beneath the receipt was a torn piece of notebook paper, edges jagged like it had been ripped out in anger. Margaret's handwriting again, but messier this time, frantic. They must never know what happened that night. My heart stopped. What night? I closed my eyes and forced myself back to 2003. Devin would have been 9, Ashley 7, Jordan just 4 years old. We were living in that cramped rental on Oakwood Drive because we'd lost the house. I'd been laid off from the mill during the recession. Money was tight. We fought about everything, bills, groceries, how I couldn't find work fast enough. I remembered being angry, so angry. Angry at myself for failing, angry at Margaret for not understanding, angry at the world for making me feel small. But that night, I pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars, digging through memories like a man searching wreckage. There were so many nights that year, so many slammed doors and raised voices, and mornings where we didn't speak. But one night stood out. Late summer, humid. The kids were supposed to be asleep. Margaret and I were in the kitchen, and I was drunk. Whiskey I'd bought with money we didn't have. We were screaming about something. The electricity bill, my job interviews going nowhere. I couldn't remember, but I remembered her face, the fear in it. And then, nothing. A blank space where memory should be. I stared at the note again. They must never know what happened that night. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Ashley and Jordan are flying in tomorrow morning. Don't try to talk to us separately. We do this together or not at all. Another text. Jordan this time. Mom wanted to protect you, but we can't anymore. The basement suddenly felt too small. The air too thin. What happened that night? And why couldn't I remember? I didn't sleep that night either. I sat at the kitchen table until 3 a.m, that torn note in front of me, whiskey burning my throat. They must never know what happened that night. The words blurred together. My phone sat dark and silent beside me, mocking. At 7 a.m, it finally rang. Ashley. Video call. I answered, and there she was. My middle child. 25 now. Sitting on a hotel balcony with the Miami skyline glowing behind her. She wore sunglasses even though the sun was barely up. Her jaw was set tight, shoulders rigid. She looked like Margaret when she was angry. You weren't supposed to find that box, she said. No hello. No, how are you holding up, Dad? Well, I did. My voice came out rougher than I intended. You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Ashley pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, swollen. She'd been crying. Mom made us promise, Dad. All of us. We weren't supposed to come to the funeral. We weren't supposed to tell you any of this until you were ready. Ready for what? She looked away, staring at the ocean. For the truth. Then tell me. I leaned closer to the screen. Please, Ashley, I need to know what I did. Her laugh was bitter. That's the worst part. You don't even remember. Remember what? Ashley wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was 7, maybe 8. I woke up because I heard shouting, you and Mom in the kitchen. I crept to the top of the stairs and just listened. My chest tightened. You were drunk, really drunk, and you were screaming at her about money, about the house, about everything falling apart. And then, she stopped, swallowed hard. Then, it got quiet. Too quiet. Ashley, I went downstairs an hour later to get water. Mom was sitting on the kitchen floor, crying. Just sitting there in the dark, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Ashley's voice broke. I asked her what was wrong, and she looked at me with these empty eyes and said, "He doesn't even remember." The room spun. I don't understand. She wouldn't tell me what happened that night, Dad. She never did. But whatever it was, it broke something in her. And she spent the rest of her life protecting you from it, protecting us from it. My hands were shaking. Ashley, I would never. I didn't. Before she died, Mom made a video. She said we weren't allowed to watch it until you called us, until you started asking questions. She said when that happened, we'd know you were finally ready to face it. My throat closed up. She wanted you to see it first, alone, before we all sit down tomorrow." Ashley's finger moved across her phone screen. "I'm sending it now." My phone buzzed. One file. Video. 12 minutes long. The thumbnail showed Margaret sitting in our bedroom, lamplight soft on her face. She looked tired. So tired. "Watch it, Dad." Ashley's voice pulled me back. "And then tomorrow at 10, we'll all be there, at the house, and you're going to tell us if you finally remember." "Ashley, wait!" But she had already hung up. I sat there staring at the video file. Margaret's face frozen on the screen, halfway through saying something I couldn't hear yet. My finger hovered over play. Whatever was on this video would change everything, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But I pressed play anyway.
I pressed play. The screen flickered. Then Margaret appeared, sitting on the edge of our bed, the one I'd been sleeping in alone for 3 weeks now. She wore her favorite blue cardigan, the one with the missing button I'd always meant to fix. Her hair was thin from the chemo, tied back in a loose ponytail. She looked so small. But her eyes, God, her eyes were clear, determined. "Hi, baby." Her voice cracked, and so did I. "If you're watching this, it means you found the letters, the notes, the pieces I left behind." She took a shaky breath. "I need you to understand something, Wilbert. I loved you. I love you even now, wherever I am. But love doesn't erase the past. And the past is why our children aren't at my funeral." My hands gripped the phone so hard it hurt. "Do you remember July 14th, 2003? The date meant nothing. I shook my head at the screen like she could see me. "It was a Saturday. Hot. Humid. You'd been out of work for 6 months, and we were drowning. The bank was threatening foreclosure. We had $17 in our account." Her voice steadied, like she'd rehearsed this. "You went to Danny's house that afternoon. You said you needed to clear your head. But you weren't clearing your head, Wilbert. You were drinking." My stomach dropped. "You came home around 8. I could smell the whiskey from across the room. We fought. You said terrible things. I said terrible things. And then you grabbed the car keys and said you needed air. No. I begged you not to drive, but you were so angry. And I was tired of fighting, so I let you go." Tears streamed down her face now. "Jordan went with you." The world stopped. "She was 4 years old, Wilbert. 4. She wanted to go to the gas station for candy. You said yes because you weren't thinking straight. You weren't there." I couldn't breathe. "You made it 3 blocks before you ran a stop sign on County Road M. A pickup truck T-boned the passenger side. Jordan's side." Images flashed. Fragments. Broken glass. Sirens. A little girl screaming. But they felt like someone else's memories. Like a movie I'd seen years ago and half forgotten. She had a fractured arm, bruised ribs, concussion. She was in the hospital for 2 days. Margaret wiped her eyes. "But you don't remember any of it, do you? Because you blacked out. The trauma, the alcohol, the guilt. Your brain just erased it." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "The police came. They asked questions, and I lied, Wilbert." Her voice turned hollow. "I told them it was a hit and run. I said we were parked at the grocery store, and someone sideswiped us and drove off. I gave a fake description. I filed a false report. I committed a crime to protect you." Tears blurred my vision. "The kids knew. Devin saw you stumble out of the car. Ashley heard me on the phone with the police, making up the story. And Jordan," Margaret's voice cracked. "Jordan remembered everything. She was terrified of you for years after that. Wouldn't let you drive her anywhere, wouldn't be alone with you." I remembered that. The distance. The way Jordan always chose Margaret.
I thought it was just a phase. I forgave you, Wilbert. I did. But I couldn't forgive what it did to them. The way they had to carry that lie. The way they had to watch me protect you while you got to forget. Margaret leaned closer to the camera, eyes piercing. If they're not at my funeral, it's because I asked them not to bury another lie. I wanted you to grieve alone, to finally feel the weight of what you've been running from. The screen went black, and I sat there in the dark, finally remembering everything.
The phone slipped from my hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. I didn't move, couldn't move, just stared at the broken screen. Margaret's frozen face cracked down the middle like everything else in my life. July 14th, 2003. The date echoed in my skull, and suddenly the floodgates opened. I remembered. Headlights, spinning, the sickening crunch of metal on metal. I was behind the wheel, knuckles white, the world tilting sideways, the stop sign I never saw, the pickup truck coming from nowhere. Jordan's scream, high-pitched, terrified, a sound no father should ever hear. "Daddy!" The passenger side caved in like paper, glass exploding, her little arm bent wrong, blood on her forehead trickling down into her wide, shocked eyes. I remembered stumbling out of the car, legs barely holding me, the smell of whiskey on my breath mixing with gasoline and burnt rubber. A man yelling at me from the truck. "Are you drunk? Jesus Christ, is that a kid?" Margaret arriving, her face white as snow, taking control. It was a hit and run, she told the paramedics, voice steady even as her hands shook. We were parked. Someone hit us and drove off. She described a vehicle that didn't exist, a driver who was never there. And I just stood there, numb, letting her lie for me. Jordan in the hospital bed, tiny in the blue gown, staring at me like I was a stranger, a monster. She wouldn't let me touch her, flinched when I came close. Margaret held her instead, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Daddy didn't mean it. Daddy's sorry." But I wasn't sorry, because I didn't remember. My brain had taken that night and buried it so deep I could pretend it never happened. I went on living, working, being a father, while they all carried the weight of what I'd done. I sank to the floor, back against the cabinets, and the sobs came, ugly, choking sounds I didn't recognize as my own. My hands found the broken phone, glass cutting into my palms, blood mixing with tears. I did this. I hurt my daughter. I made my wife lie to the police. I forced my children to carry a secret that poisoned them from the inside out. And I forgot. Not because I was cruel, but because I was weak. Because remembering would have meant facing what I truly was, a father who almost killed his own child. The kitchen spun. I pressed my forehead to the cold tile floor, tasting salt and copper and shame. How do you come back from this? How do you apologize for 2 decades of forgetting? The doorbell rang. I froze. Breath caught in my throat. It rang again, insistent. I dragged myself to my feet, legs shaking, blood dripping from my palms onto the floor, stumbled through the living room, vision blurred, reached for the doorknob, pulled it open. Jordan stood on the porch. She was 21 now, dark hair like Margaret's, but her eyes were mine, and they were filled with something I couldn't name. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "We need to talk." She was soaked. Rain dripped from her dark hair onto the porch, pooling at her feet. She wore an oversized hoodie, one of mine from years ago, and jeans torn at the knees. But what caught my attention was the necklace around her throat, a small silver chain with a seashell pendant. Margaret's favorite, the one I'd bought her on our honeymoon in Galveston. Jordan, my voice came out broken. You're supposed to be at that concert. You said... I lied. She looked down at her sneakers. There was no concert, Dad. I couldn't be there at the funeral. I couldn't watch you sit there alone and pretend I didn't know why. My throat tightened. Come inside. You're freezing. She hesitated, then stepped past me into the house. I closed the door, and suddenly the silence was deafening. My daughter, my baby girl, standing in the living room like a stranger dripping rainwater onto the carpet Margaret used to vacuum every Saturday. Jordan turned to face me, arms wrapped around herself. Mom said you'd finally remember. The words hit like a fist. I watched the video. I remember everything now. Her eyes filled with tears, but her jaw stayed tight. Do you? Do you really? Because you spent 22 years looking at me like nothing ever happened, like I was just difficult, moody, going through phases. Jordan, I didn't... You broke my arm, Dad. You ran that stop sign and you broke my arm and gave me a concussion, and then you just forgot, like it was nothing. I didn't forget on purpose. The words exploded out of me. I didn't choose to. My brain just... I know, she wiped her eyes angrily. Mom explained it. Trauma, blackout, guilt so heavy your mind buried it to survive. I know all that. But do you have any idea what it's like to be a kid, lying in a hospital bed, and your father looks at you like a puzzle he can't solve? I sank onto the couch, head in my hands. Blood from my cut palms stained my jeans. I'm sorry. God, Jordan, I'm so sorry. I know you are. Her voice softened just a little. That's why I came. I looked up. What? She crossed the room and sat beside me, keeping a careful distance. I haven't slept in 3 days, ever since Mom died. I kept thinking about you sitting in that chapel all alone, and Her voice broke. I hated myself for not being there, even though Mom made us promise, even though she said it was the right thing. She was trying to protect me. She was always trying to protect you. She pulled the seashell necklace over her head and held it in her palm. She wore this every single day. Even at the end, when she was too weak to get out of bed, she'd touch it and say, "Your father gave me this when we were happy." Tears blurred my vision. She never stopped loving you, Dad, even after everything. That's what made it so hard. Jordan reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out an envelope, small, cream-colored, sealed with red wax. My name on the front in Margaret's handwriting. She gave this to me 2 weeks before she died, said I was only supposed to give it to you if you remembered, if you really remembered, not just heard the story. She pressed the envelope into my bleeding hand. I stared at the envelope, heart hammering. What's in it? Jordan stood, pulling her hood back up. I don't know. She made me promise not to read it. She headed toward the door, then paused. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Everyone will be here. Read it before then, okay? Jordan, wait. She turned back, and for the first time in years, I saw my little girl. Scared, hurting, but still there. I'm glad you remembered, Dad. I really am. Then she was gone, swallowed by rain and darkness, and I sat there, holding the final letter, afraid to break the seal.
I didn't open it right away. I sat on the porch instead, rain hammering the roof, that cream envelope in my lap like a live grenade. The seal felt thick under my thumb, red wax pressed with Margaret's old ring, but one her grandmother gave her. She'd only used it for important things: wedding invitations, birth announcements, final words. The front door creaked. Jordan appeared beside me, hood pulled low, hands shoved deep in her pockets. "I thought you left," I said quietly. "I got to the end of the driveway and couldn't make myself go." She sat down on the porch steps, keeping distance between us. Thunder rolled across the sky. The porch light flickered but held. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she grown up? When had she stopped being that 4-year-old in pigtails who used to demand piggyback rides and believed I could fix anything? "Did your mom ever talk to you about that night after she told you to stay away from the funeral?" Jordan nodded slowly. "Once, about a month before she died. She said, 'Your father isn't a bad man. He's just a man who made a terrible mistake and couldn't live with it, so his brain decided he wouldn't have to.'" She pulled her knees to her chest. She said she spent 20 years angry about it. Then she got cancer and realized anger was just another way of loving someone who hurt you. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal. The letter inside was short, 1 page. Margaret's handwriting near the end was shaky, like her hands had been too weak to hold the pen steady. "My dearest Wilbert, if you're reading this, Jordan gave it to you, which means you finally remember. I'm glad, not because I wanted you to suffer, but because I needed you to understand what I carried all these years, and what our children carried. Love isn't absolution, baby. Love is endurance. It's choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It's protecting someone even when they don't deserve it. It's forgiving someone who can't forgive themselves. I forgave you a long time ago. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't, but because holding on to that night was killing me slower than the cancer ever could. I asked the children to stay away from my funeral because I didn't want them burying their mother alongside their anger. I wanted them to grieve me honestly, without the weight of having to perform forgiveness they weren't ready to give. And I wanted you to sit in that chapel alone and finally feel what I felt that night in 2003, the terror, the helplessness, the crushing weight of a mistake that can't be undone. Now you know, now you remember, now you understand why they couldn't look at you the same way, why holidays felt forced, why Jordan flinched when you reached for her, why Devin found excuses to stay at college, why Ashley chose Miami over coming home. But here's the truth, Wilbert. They love you. They always have. They just didn't know how to love someone who forgot he hurt them. Give them time. Give yourself grace. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way back to each other. I love you. I always will. By Margaret. I folded the letter with shaking hands. Rain pounded the driveway. Thunder growled overhead. Jordan's voice cut through the storm. Quiet but firm. "Do you forgive yourself?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing came out, because the answer was no, and I wasn't sure it ever would be. Jordan stood, pulling her hood tighter. That's what I thought. She started down the steps, then paused at the bottom. 10 a.m. tomorrow, Dad. Everyone will be there. Will you? My voice cracked. She looked back at me, eyes unreadable in the dark. I don't know yet. Then she disappeared into the rain, leaving me alone with Margaret's final words and a question I couldn't answer.
I didn't sleep. By 4 a.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at my children's names in my contacts. 3 names. 3 people I'd failed in ways I was only beginning to understand. I called Ashley first. She answered on the 5th ring, voice thick with sleep. "Dad? It's 4 a.m. I know. I'm sorry. I watched the video. I read both letters. Ashley, I remember everything now, and I need you to know how sorry I am." Silence. Then, quietly, "You really remember?" Every detail. The stop sign, the truck, Jordan's arm, your mom lying to the police while I just stood there. Tears streamed down my face. I remember how I failed all of you. Her breath caught. Why didn't you ever say anything? All those years, you acted like nothing happened. Because I genuinely didn't remember. My brain buried it so deep, I convinced myself it never existed. I wiped my eyes, but that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't undo the hurt. Ashley was quiet for a long moment. Mom said you'd understand eventually. She said when you did, we'd know if we could forgive you. Can you? I don't know yet, Dad. Her voice softened, but I'll come home. For the 10 o'clock meeting, I'll be there. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have a lot to talk about. Next, I called Devin. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message, rambling, desperate, honest. Told him I remembered. Told him I was sorry. Told him I understood if he never wanted to see me again. He didn't call back. By 8 a.m., I was standing at Margaret's grave, fresh dirt still mounded over where they'd laid her 3 days ago. The headstone wasn't up yet, just a temporary marker, with her name and dates. Margaret Ann Whitmore, 1981 to 2025. Beloved wife and mother. I'm so sorry, I whispered to the ground, for all of it. She knew you were. I spun around. Jordan stood 10 feet away, hands in her pockets, eyes red but clear. You came back. I never really left. She walked closer, stopping beside me. Mom used to come here, to the cemetery, when Grandma died. She'd sit and talk to her for hours, said it helped. We stood in silence, staring at the grave. Will you forgive me? Eventually? Jordan didn't answer right away. Finally, I think so. Maybe. Mom did, and she was the one who had to lie for you. She looked at me. But it's going to take time, Dad. I understand. And you have to actually change, not just apologize. I will. My phone buzzed. A text. I pulled it out. Devin. Got your message. I'm still angry, but maybe I'll come too. We'll see. I showed Jordan the screen. She read it and nodded slowly. That's more than I expected from him. Hope flickered in my chest. For the first time in days. 10 o'clock, I said. Everyone at the house. Everyone at the house, Jordan echoed. And for the first time since Margaret died, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other.
They came separately. Ashley first, pulling up in a rental sedan at 9:47 a.m., Miami tan fading under Wisconsin gray. She wore black jeans and Margaret's old cardigan, the blue one with the missing button. She didn't come to the house, just texted, "I'm at the cemetery." Jordan arrived 10 minutes later in her beat-up Honda, parking 3 spaces away from Ashley's car. They nodded at each other across the gravel lot, but didn't speak. I got there at 9:59. My hands shook as I turned off the engine. Devin's truck pulled in at 10:03. He sat there for a full minute before getting out, jaw tight, sunglasses hiding his eyes, even though the sky was thick with clouds. He looked older somehow, harder. We all stood in a loose circle around Margaret's grave, 20 feet of space between each of us, like we were strangers at a bus stop instead of family. The temporary marker looked so small, so inadequate for a woman who held us together for decades. Nobody spoke. A crow cawed from the oak tree overhead. Wind rustled through the grass. The silence stretched until it hurt. Finally, I cleared my throat. I thought I'd lost you all the day your mother died. Standing in that chapel alone, watching them close her casket, I was sure that was it, that I'd buried my wife and my family on the same day. Devon shifted his weight. Ashley wiped her eyes. But turns out, I continued, she was the one who found us again. Even in death, she was still protecting us, still loving us, still trying to put back together what I broke. Jordan's shoulders shook with silent sobs. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back a childhood where your father wasn't a man who hurt you and forgot. I can't erase the lies your mother had to tell, or the weight you've carried for 22 years. I looked at each of them. But I can promise you this, I remember now, and I will never forget again. Ashley knelt first, pulling something from her purse, a photo in a small frame. Our family at Disney World, 1999, before everything fell apart. She placed it gently against the headstone. For you, Mom, she whispered. Jordan went next, removing the seashell necklace from around her throat. She kissed it once and laid it beside the photo. Thank you for loving us enough to tell the truth. Devon hesitated. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his old baseball glove, the one Margaret had bought him for his 10th birthday, leather worn soft from 1,000 catches. He set it down carefully. You were always our MVP, Mom. His voice cracked. We love you. The four of us stood there, staring at Margaret's grave, at the small collection of memories we'd left behind. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Ashley broke the silence first. She looked at me, eyes red but steady. Dad, what now? The question hung in the air. What now? How do you rebuild a family from rubble? How do you learn to trust again when trust has been shattered? How do you move forward when the person who held you together is gone? I didn't have an answer, but I knew where to start. Now, I said quietly, we try. Devon pulled off his sunglasses. His eyes met mine, guarded but not closed. Just try? He asked. I nodded. It's all I've got. Ashley and Jordan exchanged glances. Some silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Jordan spoke. Okay, Dad. We'll try. And for the first time in 22 years, we stood together. Not healed, not fixed, but together.
The house was quiet when I got home. Not the suffocating silence of the funeral, not the heavy accusatory quiet of the days after. This was different. Lighter somehow, like the air itself had exhaled. I walked through rooms that still smelled like Margaret, lavender from her soap, coffee from her favorite mug still sitting by the sink, her reading glasses on the counter, her slippers by the couch. 1,000 small reminders that she'd existed here, loved here, died here. But the ghosts felt gentler now. I poured myself water, no whiskey, not tonight, and sat at the kitchen table where I'd read her letters, watched her video, finally remembered what I'd spent 2 decades forgetting. My phone sat face down on the wood. I picked it up, scrolled to voicemails, found the one I'd saved from 3 months ago, before the cancer got bad, before her voice turned weak and thin. I pressed play. Hey, baby, it's me. I'm at the pharmacy picking up my prescription. I know you're working late, but I wanted to remind you to eat something. There's leftover pot roast in the fridge. A pause, her breathing soft. I love you, Wilbert. I know things have been hard. I know we've been carrying weight we never talk about. But I need you to know, whatever happens, you were the love of my life. Take care of them and yourself. The message ended. I played it again and again, let her voice wash over me like absolution I didn't deserve but desperately needed. I'm trying, Margaret. I'm really trying. And then I cried. Not the gasping, broken sobs from the basement, not the shame-soaked tears from the night I remembered. This was different, cleaner, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. I cried for the man I'd been, drunk, reckless, dangerous. For the father who'd hurt his daughter and forgotten. For the husband who'd let his wife carry lies that weren't hers to bear. But I also cried for what might still be possible. For Ashley's tentative forgiveness. For Jordan standing beside me at the grave. For Devon's, maybe I'll come too. For the chance to be better than I'd been. My phone buzzed on the table. I wiped my eyes and looked down. A notification lit up the screen. A text in the family group chat, the one that had been silent for months. Ashley, dinner tomorrow? Nothing fancy, just us. Jordan, I'm in. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Devon, yeah. Okay. My breath caught. I typed slowly, hands still shaking. Wilbert, I'll cook. Mom's pot roast recipe. 3 dots. Then, perfect. I set the phone down and looked around the empty house. Margaret's house. Our house. The place where everything broke and maybe, just maybe, could start to mend. Tomorrow we'd sit at this table. Tomorrow we'd try. And that was enough.
The rain had softened overnight. I woke to pale sunlight streaming through the bedroom curtains, Margaret's curtains, the ones she'd sewn herself because store-bought never hung right. The kind of gentle morning light she used to love, the kind that made her say, "See, even Wisconsin gets it right sometimes." I got up slowly, muscles aching like I'd run a marathon. Maybe I had. Maybe grief is its own kind of endurance race. In the kitchen, I pulled out the cast-iron skillet, Margaret's favorite, and started breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I set one plate at my usual spot. Then I paused, looked at the empty chairs, and set 3 more plates. 4 coffee mugs, 4 sets of silverware, 4 cloth napkins Margaret had embroidered with our initials years ago, back when she still believed we'd always eat together. The letter wasn't a curse. I understood that now. It was a map. Margaret knew grief would tear us apart, knew that her death would crack open wounds we'd all been pretending didn't exist. But she also knew that sometimes you have to break something completely before you can rebuild it right. She'd orchestrated her own funeral knowing I'd sit alone, knowing I'd find the letters, knowing I'd finally remember, knowing the kids would stay away until the truth came out. It was cruel. And it was mercy. Because if they'd come to the funeral carrying that secret, carrying 22 years of resentment and unspoken hurt, we'd have buried more than Margaret that day. We'd have buried any chance of finding our way back. Instead, she forced us to face it, to break open, to bleed. And maybe, just maybe, to heal. I poured coffee into all 4 mugs and stood at the window, watching rain drip from the oak tree in the backyard. The same tree where we'd hung a tire swing when Devon was 6, where Jordan learned to climb, where Ashley used to read books in the shade while Margaret gardened below. The doorbell rang. My heart stopped. Then, laughter. Nervous, tentative,
but real, filtered through the front door. I walked slowly to the entrance, hand trembling as I reached for the knob, pulled it open. All three of them stood on the porch. Devin, in his Longhorns hoodie, hair still wet from the shower. Ashley, holding a bakery box, probably picked up on the way over. Jordan with Margaret's seashell necklace back around her throat, like she couldn't bear to leave it at the grave. They looked at me. I looked at them. Nobody moved. Then Ashley smiled, small, fragile, but genuine. "We brought cinnamon rolls. Your pot roast is great, Dad, but your baking sucks." I laughed, actually laughed, and it felt like breathing for the first time in weeks. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Coffee's ready." They filed past me into the house, our house, and suddenly it didn't feel so empty anymore. I glanced at Margaret's photo on the mantel, the one from our 20th anniversary, her smile frozen in time, eyes bright with love. "They came after all," I whispered. And I swear, somewhere beyond grief and memory and all the years we'd lost, I felt her smile back. Some goodbyes aren't meant to end. They're meant to bring the living back to life.
So here's my question for you. Was I right to handle it this way? Tell me in the comments below. What would you have done in my position? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more real-life tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Because trust me, there's so much more on this channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next life story.